Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Garibaldi Red podcast, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Max Hayes, your host, and we are live on this Friday morning to discuss the latest transfer state of play, if you like, surrounding the City Ground. Lots discussed and lots of media reports yesterday. And since the last podcast that me and Mark did about the PSR deadline, Moussa Niakhate leaving, most likely, and bids coming in for Murillo, to discuss all of that and everything else that I'm sure will come our way. Delighted to say David Boledman joins us again. David, good to see you. Nice to have you back. And I do feel slightly bad because you were just saying to me before we came on air, I have disturbed your holiday.
Well, it's a winter holiday, Max. So it's a little bit different from the pure summer bliss and the European holidays and watching Wimbledon and the Euros that you guys might be on. But it's a nice time waking up in the morning and seeing some quality football that's not perhaps as stressful and just a fun watch. Not enough Nottingham Forest players, though, in the Euros for mine, which is a little bit annoying.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, actually, that I feel like, I could get more passionate maybe about the Euros, and in particular England, if there was maybe a Forest player in there. Yeah, just exactly. And that's Mangala. But obviously Mangala's
not really even a Forest player anyway, is he?
Well, exactly. We're going to talk about him in a minute because he is off pretty much. The loan deal for him is about to be made permanent. Right, let's touch on the main bit of news then, which John Percy from The Telegraph reported yesterday. So I'm pretty much going to read what he's stated in the article. That Forest basically hope to raise the 20 million required for the PSR deadline, which is on the 30th of June. So literally just in 2 days' time, Forest have to submit their accounts to the Premier League, which is just like any business. It's like the end of the financial year, if you like. Forest have to submit their accounts, show what they've lost, what they've earned, everything like that. And then it isn't just obviously transfers and things like that. It's, all sorts of financial aspects around the club, commercial revenue, ticket revenue, all of that. So basically, Forest hope to raise the 20 million through selling Moussa Niakhate, who's the deal kind of to Lyon yesterday progressed very, very quickly. And he is in France, I think, having his medical as we speak right now. So Moussa Niakhate won't be a Forest player anymore. He is off. Let's touch on that news, actually, David, before we kind of go and branch out into anything else. I've always liked Niakhate. Thought he was a great centre-back. Again, a little bit injury-prone. But for the offer we've received, bear in mind we bought him for, I think it was around 11, 12 million, to then sell him on for 20 to pretty much resolve the PSR worries. It's a smart bit of business, that.
Terrific piece of business. You'd have to think that Moussa Niakhate doesn't really owe us anything. He kind of did come into the Forest squad when we launched into the Premier League. And kind of the view was that he would be a mainstay of the centre-back pairings, and he hasn't quite nailed that. And he also didn't nail being the backup left-back in the way that I think we would have liked either. With 1 year left on his contract, how could we possibly say no to a £20 million offer when we got him for, 11 or 12, and you have the amortised number come off as well? That's just like a terrific bit of business. I think he'll be more comfortable playing for Lyon. Obviously, the French-speaking nation of Senegal will make him obviously more comfortable, and it's probably a higher level of, probably slightly higher, you could say, arguable than where Forest is at with the Europa League next season. I think he owes us nothing. I think he's been a brilliant servant for us, and I will miss the throw-ins. I thought they were terrific, those throw-ins, but we, all the owners aren't too bad either, so maybe we'll be okay on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose when you look at Forest side and defensively, you mentioned there Niakhate being that kind of left-sided centre-back. I mean, Omar Balotelli will most likely step up next season. We've seen what he can offer, kind of a young, almost hungry centre-back for Forest. And he's done a good job. And you forget that if it wasn't for almost Cooper leaving and Nuno coming in, he might not have had the chance that he possibly deserved. And then obviously, let's see what happens with Murillo. But providing that Murillo stays and you have Omar Balotelli with him, and you've got Willy Bolly, providing that, the injury there, his almost injury-prone self isn't too bad next season, it's still quite a strong defence in terms of centre-backs when you look at it, isn't it?
As long as we can keep Murillo, it just seems a brain explosion to sell Moussa Niakhate, given that he's also a left-footed centre-back. it just seems a brain explosion to let him go if Murillo was also leaving. So you would think maybe this points to, unless we're getting an outrageous offer on Murillo, that we're going to be keeping him, but you just can't be sure. £70 million is a lot of money for us. You know, is that an offer that's going to be too good to be true? But yeah, I think as Steve Hornby King's come through in the comments, good business, but leaves us, it's a little bit thin. We are going to need to sign another centre back, aren't we? And so I've seen a few linked to us, but nothing concrete that's made me think, oh, yeah, I'd like to have that one. And it's just so difficult to also assess these centre backs from these other leagues and to really know what's going on. So you just got to trust the scouting group. But the scouting for the centre backs to Nottingham Forest has been stronger. So I'm big on, some teams are better at scouting some positions than others. And so if you think about the success that we had scouting Murillo and Omobamidele and Niakhate and arguably Felipe, you might back us to be able to get another one in at the appropriate price. So great bit of business for mine. Goes with our blessing, owes us nothing. But it is another point, and maybe this is more for the international fans, Max, but I find the chop and changing of the squads, the frequency of it, a little frustrating because you get invested in players. And I think when you're not on the ground and not in Nottingham, it becomes a little bit tougher. Do you find that as well, or is that not something you care about as much?
A little bit. I suppose I understand it from an international fan's point of view more. I think when you go every week, you can almost build that connection with the team. But I think it was difficult actually at stages last season. I think as well, particularly when Cooper left, you felt like almost the spirit around the team. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You know, is this the team that I'm invested in and not want to win every week, but almost have that kind of same passion and enthusiasm for it. And I think it is difficult. And I always think it would be interesting if just football as a whole put some kind of rule in which stop you signing almost or selling players. You have to keep them for a certain time. And I think that would throw lots of clubs under the bus, and in particular Forest that have made mistakes in the past with transfers. Let's touch on so many. Let's touch on Murillo, because as you mentioned there, David, I don't think any Forest fan wants him to go. I mean, if you had to ask me about taking a 4 points deduction or keeping Murillo or having to sell him, I'd argue
I'd take the 4.
I mean, it's interesting because I disagree. I think that it would just be silly to invite that onto us again, and I just think I think you're just playing incredibly risky business to do that. So, I'd argue that Forest should sell him.
We've touched on this discussion, Max, though, because I'm a firm believer they should be pushing the rules to the absolute limit, and the rules may also change. And I feel like we were comfortable with that points deduction last season. As much as we did feel it was a bit touch and go, we weren't really ever getting relegated. I'm comfortable with it. This season's is a little bit tougher, but
I think
you got to keep Murillo. Morgan Gibbs White. How can you lose those two, Max?
Yeah, no, I know. And I think also if you can keep Morgan Gibbs White, who I think the Forest team currently is built round in a way, I think Murillo is not easily replaceable, but he's easier to replace in a way. Yes. And I think that, I know we just touched on about not having the left-sided centre-back, and particularly now Niakhate goes, but if Forest had to get rid of him just to cover the PSR, I think we just have to go, look, the rules are changing anyway. This time next year, Forest hopefully won't be in this position because Premier League clubs are going to vote on this rule change. PSR will be incredibly different. It will look different. It will sound different. And ultimately, Forest hopefully can look back on the last few years and say, well, look, we avoided a 4 point deduction. And I also wonder whether the Premier League would dock Forest more points for almost going, almost going if you again. Almost if you like, two fingers will take it, because I just think it's too risky. But who knows? Never say never. He's with
breaking ankles wherever he goes.
I know. I'm going to miss the chant. I'm going to miss the chant if he goes. Let's talk about if he's going to go, because the media reported yesterday.
5 million, Max.
Yeah, 70 million is what the Forest hierarchy value him at, probably, if not a little more. I mean, Murillo has been targeted by the new Chelsea head coach, Enzo Marcia, who has obviously left Leicester to go to Chelsea, and he's a fan of Murillo. Juventus also inquired and are interested. There hasn't been talks yet. I don't think anything concrete in terms of any media reports. So, it's understood. I think the media were reporting yesterday that it's understood that the deal won't happen that quickly as the Niakhate deal has happened if Murillo was to go. However, I think it's something that the club will consider over the next 2 weeks, because Forest should, albeit given some other outgoings, cover this PSR deadline. It's just whether they can turn down 70, 75 million for the centre back. I mean, do you think he's worth more than that, David, actually?
Well, he's worth whatever someone's prepared to pay for him, for starters. And would you trade? Well, let's just play this out. Would you trade him for Brennan Johnson right now, Matt?
No.
So therefore, he's worth more than 55 million
Yeah,
pounds
100%.
to the Nottingham Forest team. So, he's a terrific player. Like he is what we want all of the signings to be that come into the squad. Instantly a first team player. Like instantly you heard the reports. He's carving it up at training. It was like basically put into the first team immediately. 32 appearances last season, 91% of them off as a starting player. Purchased for 12 million. My God, if we could get him for 70, that just solves basically every problem. I think the most frustrating part of the Murillo sale is that for every Murillo, there's 3 John Joe, Emmanuel Dennis's, and Ibrahim Sangare. And so you just sit there banging your head against the wall and thinking, well, if we didn't buy them, then we could keep Murillo. And so it just seemed obvious to most Forest fans. What do you make of Trevor or Trevoh Chalobah?
Yeah, he's been linked, hasn't he, as part of almost a switch deal in a way. That's a difficult one. Again, it's whether what Forest need, because I think in terms of the attacking options at the minute, I mean, because just to confirm, Trevor Chalobah, I'm getting the right Chalobah here, aren't I, David?
Yes. Yeah, he's been nominated as the exchange player. So I think it's 50 million or something from Chelsea plus Chalobah. Now I think Forest have gone in on him before, and he had an injury-prone end of the season. I don't mind it from a signing. I like the idea of Forest being a land of opportunity. So Callum Hudson-Odoi and Anthony Elanga, I think, being the prime examples of players coming from heralded, Premier League teams, not being able to get their run, even Nico Williams to a lesser extent, and then coming in and being able to get their chance. How much is Callum Hudson-Odoi worth now? Is he almost worth? So, you think about the value that we've added in him. And so, Chelsea are no fools. And so they're not going to sign poor players. And so if he was able to come into the team, then maybe his value would go up. So I don't mind it as a swap. I think there may be some PSR benefits as well in the trade, in the exchanges, in terms of how that might also look for us. But it's got to be big bucks. So it has to be just an outrageous amount of money for a Murillo departure. Unlike the big fear I have is it's like a Steve Stone style sale, which may be a little bit beyond your time, Maxie. But
much beyond my time, mate.
Well, when Forest sold Steve Stone, you just knew it was not enough money and it was just going to kill us. And so it's just instantly you're just banging your head against the wall. And so that's my big fear, is that we just don't get enough. But if we get 70, I think we've got to take it. And one other shout out on his commentaries that he made about departing Forest. I've seen a little bit of slack in the socials for him. English is not his first language, and some of the words he used, if I leave, that's in a translation. I think it was something like, if I leave, you have to respect my decision. So I think let's not crucify him for the translation and the words that he may have chosen. Let's just look at the guy that was at the end of the team celebrations at the Burnley match. He was loving it, and he's loved his time. So, you tell me, Max, what's your take on it? How much?
I'd be touching towards the 80 million mark, but I think,
wow.
Yeah. But I think that, I genuinely just feel as soon as Murillo came into the Forest side, you instantly knew that he was going to be at a Real Madrid, a Juventus, or sadly a top 6 Premier League side in a year's time. And it's pretty much been a year, even if that, because I just feel like he's almost, as you said, he's shown everything that you want a Forest player to show. And I think that not just the technical ability side, but I'll always remember, and I kind of always allude back to it, that when Forest played Sheffield United and he made this clearance off the line and almost rescued the team from going, I think it was 2-0 down after Sheffield United went 1-0 up in that.
Is that the one where he was running? He kind of read the play and he's running backwards, and you're just like, well, how the hell did he just know that?
Yeah,
brilliant, wasn't it?
Exactly. Yeah. And I can remember him almost turning to the crowd and almost smiling at the Forest fans as if to say, "Don't worry, I've got you covered." You know, the other players on the pitch might not, but I have. And as you said, he seems like he's loved around the pitch and around the club. So, you know, it would be such a shame to see him go. It shows just the absolute joke, if you like, of the PSR rules and how Forest might have to do it and just everything like that. So would be a shame. However, I'd be more inclined to try and push for a higher offer. When you look at players like, you know, try and pick a player, but I mean, how much did Harry Maguire go from from Leicester to Man United that time? And then, you know, it was an incredible amount a couple of years ago. So, and I think probably Murillo's on par, if not better than Harry Maguire.
Well, I reckon Harry Maguire's an underrated England player.
Interesting you say that.
I think he's, look, I obviously don't watch much Manchester United. And he doesn't seem to take the field when we play them. But I seem to see him play for England quite a lot. I think he's quite good at English level. I would have tried to have him in my national team. I think he was injured. Just on the PSR ruling, the Premier League name, the Premier League, yet only 3 teams really are eligible or really strong enough to win the Premier League. The rules are ridiculous, and the Premier League needs to do something about it. Their number one competitor is the NFL. And I tell you what, in the NFL, 10 teams can win, are in that Super Bowl bubble. And it just makes it incredibly exciting because it's just so evenly placed. And I think, yeah, I've got this idea that there should be a salary cap, and to the benefit of your English national team, if the players that were homegrown didn't count against the salary cap, then all of your clubs would work really hard to develop homegrown talent. And that would instantly, well, not instantly, but over maybe a decade, improve your national team, which might help you sing the Football's Coming Home song a little bit later. But I think we can sign that one off. None of us want to see Murillo go, but if it's good business, we just have to trust our mates, Mr. Marinakis and those guys, don't we?
Yeah, I agree. And it's and just an interesting point to raise, actually. I think he kind of goes under a little bit under the radar in terms of off the pitch at Forest. There's a guy named George Sirianos who you might have remembered was the head of recruitment at Forest when in the promotion winning season and when Forest went up and basically made 30 signings. Marinakis sacked George Sirianos after the kind of poor start, shall we say, to the Premier League season. He wasn't happy with some of the signings. And then about 6 to 7 months later, reappointed him as an advisor to the board. And now he is the global technical director for all of Marinakis' clubs. So Forest, Olympiacos, and the Portuguese club, who I'm terribly sorry, I forgot the name of. So he's a global technical director. So he's there advising, almost pulling the strings for all the transfers. So in fairness to Sirianos, he's a very clever guy. He was the reason for Taiwo Awoniyi coming in. I think Murillo actually was more of a Marinakis move. I can remember reading in the media. So all these different things hopefully contribute to Forest off the pitch going in the right way for the recruitment. Because at the end of the day, I'm sure you agree with this, David, you need the right staff in place to almost make the right moves for the right players.
Well, yes, and also you have to applaud. You know, why do the politicians get hammered? Is because they make a comment and then don't change their opinion. Marinakis has said, look, I made a mistake sacking this guy, so much so that I put him in a stronger position. And so hats off to you for just being gutsy enough to say, yeah, I made a mistake. Look, the Taiwo signing was brilliant. I love Taiwo. So, yeah, you've got to respect that. But also just having the same players in place and just the same people around the club. So I think that's also to our benefit. What did you make of Eric De Silva?
Yeah, it was an interesting one. I was actually just about to touch on him, so nicely led into David. Kind of came out of nowhere. You know, there was a few little links. Seems like he'll train with the first team, which is interesting. Because when Forest have signed youth prospects in the past, they've often kind of gone straight to the academy, and we haven't really seen them, and then they end up getting loaned out, and then they go for a few, a few million quid in a few years' time. So interesting that he's training with the first team. interesting that he'll go with Forest to the pre-season camp, pretty much. Is the understanding. Forest will go to, I think, Spain, near Alicante. That area. It's funny because Derby are actually going to do their pre-season training camp at literally, I think, 10 minutes down the road from Forest. So yeah, Forest announced yesterday their pre-season camp, which just starts after the Euros, finishes with the final literally 2 days after that.
A lot of stick on the
Forest
Forest pre-season fixtures being a little primitive and not ambitious and standard. I don't mind it. We don't need to be going to tiring our players on international flights and traveling out to Australia 4 days after the end of the Premier League season or any of that crazy stuff, even though sure we would all love to see Forest down under. That would be absolutely terrific. No, I don't mind it. And there's a growing trend you see in a lot of the other international sports of, not playing in the preseason, not to tire your players out. So look, time will tell. I don't mind it. But on to Silva, I really like the look of him, Max. And so the thing I want to land with the Forest fans with him is I thought he showed a real strong level of maturity at the podium and also when describing himself. So when you say, how would you describe yourself as a player? His response on the Forest social was, well, I'm fast. And so and so I kind of liken it to, if you say you've got the best burger in England, then at least you're a chance of having a pretty good burger. So if he's calling out that he's fast, then he's got to be reasonably fast. And Forest's style of play is quick. And so we've also scouted, Hudson-Odoi and Alanga pretty well. And so I like the look of him from that. He comes very heralded in terms of the German national youth setup and won a few tournaments with them. I just think he shows a level of maturity that I like the look of. I don't mind a right-sided fullback and winger either. So I like mature players. Let's go for it. Not wearing his hat backwards. You beauty. Let's go. Get him in the start him now. What are you talking about? He should be.
Yeah, I was about to say he's actually quite almost a player that Forest can utilise because he's versatile. He can play, wing back or winger. So it'll be interesting to see whether he's part of Nuno's plans next season or at least on the bench. I can't imagine him starting the first game, particularly in the Premier League. But it'll be interesting to see him over pre-season, and also I agree about pre-season and. I thought the fan reaction to some of the pre-season friendlies was a little bit over the top. Bear in mind that at the end of the day, pre-season is literally almost getting the players' fitness levels up, and I think it's very hard sometimes to judge. I think if Forest lost every game now in the pre-season, I wouldn't be worried going into the Premier League season.
Well, you want to win, but you don't care if you lose the
pre-season exactly
matches. But I also don't mind them waiting to see what the fixtures list looked like. And shout out to you and Dave on that terrific video you did running through the fixtures list. It just gives us a really good download of that. So I don't mind it. I don't think we need to start a million miles an hour and need to have run the legs through the team as much. And I like the look of the fixtures. I think we've got an appropriate pre-season calendar. I can't wait. Get this Euro rubbish off.
I know, yeah. I think we're all ready for it to come back, even though we all wanted a break a couple of months ago. Right, just some other news. We'll touch on this quickly. Obviously, Oral Mangala has been on loan at Lyon. He spent the second half of the season on loan. Obviously, featured in the Euros as well as a Belgium international. That fee is set to go through. I mean, it was a loan set to be permanent anyway, so that was expected. That again will help Forest get over the PSR deadline and prevent us from breaching basically the permitted losses for the 23-24 season. So he's expected to go, which we knew months ago. And then Forest are also working on other outgoings, which will probably see Matt Turner and Vlachodimos both expected to leave, which will most likely mean that Forest have to sign, if not another keeper, which is where Carlos Miguel comes in at the Corinthians.
Oh, what a beast he looks like.
You think, I was about to say that me and Dave touched on it last week. He really does look like and it will be interesting to see whether he comes in as a number, whether Nuno does play him as that number one and he is the first choice keeper, or would that be harsh?
He's the number two.
Sells? Yeah.
He's the number two that has the potential to unseat the number one. Look, he could be. His physical attributes are just so astounding that he could come in. But we've seen large goalkeepers before. They're not always the most nimble. So let's just suck it and see. Jeez, please don't get another goalkeeper wrong.
Yeah,
please, just don't. That's, I guess that's the thing. I was just saying about we can scout centre backs, we can't seem to scout goalkeepers.
Yeah, I was about to say that we need like a goalkeeping expert. Although Nuno was a goalkeeper. That's the joke of it, is that Nuno's playing.
Maybe we should put him in goals. He can be player manager and going goals himself. Last time Forest had a player manager, would you know when that was, Max?
No, do you?
Stuart Pearce.
Really, was it?
Yep, Stuart Pearce, and he won the Manager of the Month award. I think it was in either March or April. Now, someone in the comments can correct me in the relegation season, and then he left after that. But yeah, he got Manager of the Month award. Imagine that being the last. I'm not sure if he was the last player manager in the Premier League, but he was definitely the last Forest one. So
yeah,
or maybe David Platt was a player manager as well. I don't know. I don't think he made the field though. Anyway, we'll get to that. For everyone out there, I've been pressuring Max to let me do a all-time Forest Premier League 11, which will be full of all my 90s favourites, and I think he might finally have relented.
Yeah, maybe it might happen next week if we've got time. Other players expected to leave: Joe Worrell, which is very kind of expected. Lewis O'Brien and Emmanuel Dennis and Josh Bowler also expected to depart, either on loan or permanently. But I imagine Forest would like to ship those out permanently. I can't see Forest wanting any more loan deals. Which means Forest will kind of go this season for young talent. They're expected between the ages of 20 and 24. As I read this article, I'm literally quoting John Percy in the Telegraph, so all credit to him. Forest are also across the country and across Europe for other emerging youngsters, with Birmingham City's and the Welsh international Jordan James understood to be on the radar. He's a good player, actually. I can remember playing Football Manager about a year ago, David, when it first came out, and I think Jordan James was in my squad. I think I was Birmingham City manager, actually, and I think Jordan James was in my squad, and he always seemed to do a job, so I like him.
Well, everyone has those championship or those Premier League manager players that are just your go-tos. Everyone just has those, and then in your mind, you play these seasons over and over again, and you kind of get in your mind that he becomes a Forest legend. You're like, well, actually, you never played for Forest, but you played for me as the manager of Forest for 60 years. So for me, that was always Danny Murphy from the Crew Alexandra era. He was always a terrific signing.
See, I've got a bit of a confession to make, even though it's obviously it's not real, but I manage Bayern Munich on Football Manager currently, and I decided to sign both Morgan Gibbs-White and Murillo.
Of course you did.
And Forest are like, I think Forest are like near. I think we're in like the 25, 26 season, and Forest are near the bottom of the Premier League table. Nuno's been sacked. I don't know who the manager is actually currently, but yeah, sorry to Forest. I almost felt really guilty signing them both.
It's just a simulation. At least you know what happens. Speaking of Forest managers, the Steve Cooper appointment, I think we should take that as a positive at the journey that Steve Cooper was on with Nottingham Forest. When Steve Cooper started with Nottingham Forest, he was able to secure the job of the bottom of the championship team. After his period of working with Nottingham Forest, he was able to secure a job with a former Premier League winning team that was in the Premier League. So in terms of a land of opportunity for a manager whose reputation improved, I think that's a terrific outcome for him. And we can't possibly, hold it against him for taking a club that was, maybe he can keep his home near us. And so, look, good luck to him. I'm sure he'll get a warm reception when he arrives at the City ground, and then we'll find some way of teasing him or taunting him.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that would be. I was about to say it's going to be interesting, and it's the Forest play Leicester at home. Is it towards? It's very near the end of the season. I think it actually could be one of the last. I think it's one of the last. It is. Yeah. So let's hope that's not a relegation.
Be the manager of them by then, anyway.
yeah, exactly. Let's hope for a chilled season and it not be some kind of mad game 6-pointer. Exactly. Right, enough of Forest. I know you wanted to touch on it quickly. Well, I suppose it does involve Forest, David. You want to talk about? You said to me on WhatsApp, kind of late last night UK time and early this morning UK time. You said that you wanted to talk about how Forest fans make bad England fans.
Oh, well, that was my workup. So I've got a whole bit for you, Max. Okay. I've got a whole bit. So it's bad news for the English game. They're not creative enough, and they're not positive enough. will just go on getting bad results. That is the commentary that starts for the first it's coming home chant and song when you hear that 1996 version. And it is the same old England. But now I've learned something far new about this tournament, is because I'm obviously in a few more Nottingham Forest fan groups. And I can just say, you Nottingham Forest fans are the best supporters for your Premier League team. However, you are the worst by far and away supporters for your national team. And quite frankly, Max, I love it. I'm in numerous text messages. I just get to see the whinging Poms at their best. For starters, the 1996 comedians, the Lightning Seeds, they were completely right. It is the same problem for the team that it's always been. They aren't creative enough and not positive enough. None of the players in the national team are actually that good anyway. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I don't care about Phil Foden and Bukayo Saka and Cole Palmer. I don't like those guys most of the time. Anyway, so and England can't find themselves a left-sided player since Stuart Pearce. I'm sure they would have loved Harry Kewell to be a left-sided player and chosen that. But no, I think you Forest fans need to get your happy clapper on, as the saying goes, and just blindly support your team. Like, like you're just whinging Poms. They can't do this and we don't have this. Like, come on, guys, just get behind your team.
Do you know what? Do you know what I think it is? I think in particular, and it's not just Forest fans, it'll be many other club fans of clubs that haven't done, as best as they like. I think we get so stressed watching Forest and just the ups and downs of the roller coaster. You just want kind of a nice plain sailing, easy watch summer of England winning games, and that's just not been it's just not been the case. It's been such a.
They're not as bad as you think, though, Max.
I think that Southgate. I think that Southgate just isn't the right man for England. I mean, I think he's going to leave anyway after this tournament, whatever happens.
That job sucks.
Does it?
You just get hammered by your own people. Like, you literally like the most.
It depends what type of football you play, really. It depends what type of football you play.
You haven't played positive football since Bobby Robson, have you? Or maybe since Terry Venables. Like, have you even ever seen England play positive football in your life, Max?
Probably, yeah. I was about to say probably never. God, I've been through like Roy Hodgson and losing to Iceland and all of that.
Oh, losing to Iceland, wasn't that just one of the? What about my favourite? Of course, is Australia 3, England 1 in 2003. I can talk about that game till I go blue on the face. But look, it is fun. Look, the Euros are just terrific, and it would be great if Forest had more players in it. Just imagine how more fired up we would be if Morgan Gibbs-White was in the team. Oh goodness, we'd be like so pumped up. Tell me, Max, how many Forest players would need to be in the Austrian team? I think that's who England's got next. Or who have England got next?
No, it's Slovakia next.
Slovakia. How many Forest players in the Slovakian team would be needed for you to support Slovakia against England? How many? 1, 2, 5?
3, 4, maybe. I'd kind of be fired up. I mean, I actually think that England are going to struggle on Sunday, but
they'll beat Slovakia.
I just need a decent amount to make me entertained and excited, and that's why I feel like, you know what, if England do get knocked out, I'll probably be supporting. I mean, I quite like Denmark. I've always just had a bit of a soft spot for them, not for any kind of national reason, just because I've just quite liked the side and the team, and it helps that they play in the colour red as well. So probably so probably supporting them. But just frustrating with the Euros. England's probably best chance of winning it in a while, and the performances just haven't been good enough. They've not been creative enough.
Favourable draw.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I was about to say, at least we've landed on the right side of the draw. There is, it would be.
Just need one player to just hit form.
Mm.
Like that time France won the World Cup, Mbappe was just so good. And so how can, all that time, back to France again, Zinedine Zidane was so good. And so there's just no one who's just in outrageously brilliant form for the England team. And you still don't have a left back. But other than that, I did do some reading before we leave it on penalties, my good friend. So you are more likely, and I got this from Flashscore, you're more likely to miss a penalty when you play for your national team than your league team. So the likelihood of a miss increase, I think it's like double. Penalties struck high, so you want kind of up here or over there in the goal, are more likely to score. 1 in 5 penalties are struck down the middle. So if you're a goalkeeper, you're actually better off to do the old Bree Samba and not move. that rubbish of wavering your run up, that is proven statistically to not help you score. And the penalty takers are typically more successful when they just focus on one spot and don't deviate and don't do any of that other rubbish. So there's some key takeaways for you. If that helps. Well, but we know how it's going to end up in the penalty shootout.
Oh yeah, I was about to say that. Do you know what? We should do a Garibaldi Red meetup, and we should have a penalty shootout with all of the guests, and could have like you versus Dave. I'm just trying to think who would have the best penalty. I reckon Max, that comes on quite a bit. Max Scott. He play, apparently he's a good player. He actually played in the TalkSport charity. He works for TalkSport as a broadcaster. He played in the TalkSport charity game. I think he actually scored. I watched his penalty and he took it well. So maybe we should
don't discount the Australian flavour over here, Maxie. I'm still playing Division 2 soccer at 43 years of age.
Fair play.
And I kick the corners and some of the free kicks. But we have a fantasy league for our own team, and if you miss the penalty, you lose 10 points. So it's brutal if you miss the penalty. So typically our team, you'll love this, Max. The way we decide who kicks the penalty, it's whoever marches to the ball with the most conviction, grabs it first, and puts it down. That's how we decide.
So which position do you play, David?
I'm a labouring number 10 who can hold the ball up and still skillful and has the quick wingers that are 20 years old running around the right and left of me at the minute. So I think I'm playing striker tomorrow. So we'll see how that goes. Up at 5 p.m. up at Asquith at Hornsby if anyone wants to come and watch.
If there's any Australian fans out there, get over and watch David.
There is an Australian Forest fans group. They're a bunch of legends. So we're going to have a meet up, another one next season. So it's always good fun. But so yeah,
there we go. Right, that does us nicely. I think that closes us very nice talking about your playing career. You never know. Get a trial at Forest, David. It's never too late.
I think I'm a bit old for that. But we've all look. You're not a Forest fan if you haven't put your own self in the Championship manager and set yourself as a player as well. I've been captain many a Forest team, so.
Yeah, of course. Right, that does us nicely. We'll probably be back on Monday for our main episode. Just quickly before we go, it seems like we're doing this a lot at the podcast, but ending it on a little bit of a sadder note. You may have heard me and in particular Dave Asprey talk about Barry, who was a big fan of the podcast, and we used to interview him on Matchday with Max. We got some sad news this week from Barry's son that he sadly passed away after a long battle in hospital. So we send our thoughts to Gary and the family. Barry was a real legend. It was great to interview. Was really, really good to talk about Forest with. It used to sit literally a few couple rows behind me. So it will be very sad to not have him at the City Ground the next couple of months and for the new season. So we send our love to Gary and the family and everyone associated with Barry. And just very sad news of his passing. We knew he was a big fan of the podcast as well. So we'll dedicate this one to him, and and lots of love to Gary's family. Right. David, thank you for joining us as ever. Appreciate it. We will see you very, very soon. If, as always, you enjoyed this podcast, give us a like, share, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us across Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Leave us a review if you did enjoy. And David, next week, I reckon, mate, you can have your chance at doing the 90s team. I promise you. I'm not putting Pierre Van Hooydonk in the team. I want to keep the squad happy. There's one spoiler for you, Max. There is one spoiler. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye. See you guys.